Okay, good afternoon to everybody. It's my pleasure to introduce you Marta Vilalta. Marta Vilalta is the head of the International Relations Office at the Universidad Autonoma de Barcelona, one of the partners in the HEIDA project. And she has been at this position since 2008. So she holds quite a long experience on international relations at universities. However, her academic and professional background is wider than just the university management. And I would like to mention that she studied archaeology, and even she worked as archaeologist for around 10 years. Then she studied a master on public management and moved to the field of university management first. Within this field, Marta worked for a long period as a responsible for quality assessment at the UAB, where she played a relevant role on the process of implementation and accreditation of the degrees resulting from the Bologna process in the early 2000 and so on. However, from her professional long background, I want to highlight her skills as archaeologist, since I think that the skills required for being a good archaeologist are more or less the same as those needed for working on internationalization indicators. An archaeologist needs to look for, to detect information hidden from the past, but hidden information. I admit it's not the same to excavate on the soil looking for little bones and ancient coins than looking for data in a huge, enormous organization. It's not the same, but I hope you will admit there are some connections between the two. Secondly, an archaeologist needs to identify relevant information to explain something, to explain the past, to explain the environment. So an archaeologist needs to ask the right question, as we need to. Finally, an archaeologist needs to process the information and to present it to the public, to a non-expert public, non-interested public on this issue. Probably you feel some empathy with archaeologists after that. Marta is now going to present a particular experience shared by a group of Catalan universities during the last years. I want to stress two key points from that experience in advance. You will hear Marta, but I want to advance some special points. First of all, how a group of individuals working each one in his position at different Catalan universities decided to collaborate with their colleagues in order to help each other to deal with the daily issues, and how they finally decided to create a permanent organization for that purpose. This organization, it has a quite odd name. It's called the Green Cacatua. There's a story behind that, but it's not the moment to explain. Was awarded by the European Association of International Education as a best practice of the year in 2014. Secondly, I want to stress how this group achieved to dialogue with the Catalan government, so with the public administration in charge of higher education in the region, and most important, how this administration accepted this dialogue as a useful way to know better the real needs of the Catalan universities on internationalization. So please, Marta, come on.
Thank you, Xavier. Well, as Xavier just said, I'm going to explain you an experience and a project not by my university, Universidad Autonoma de Barcelona, but of all the international relations officers of the Catalan universities. I will explain a little introduction about this Catalan university system, then a little bit more of who we are, the Green Kakadu, what is our project, why we choose to work on this project, and how we manage it. As a little introduction about Catalonia, we are located in the northeast corner of the Iberian Peninsula, on the other side of the Mediterranean. We are a population of a little more than 7,500,000 people on 32,000 square kilometers. And we have two languages, Catalan and Spanish. The Catalan university system is formed by 12 universities, 7 public and 4 private, plus 1 online university, the Open University of Catalonia. And together, all the 12 universities, we have, well, let's say the 11 universities, because the online, they only have more than all the rest of the universities. We have more than 200,000 students. The list of the universities, you may have agreements with some or many of them. The 7 public universities, 4 of them are located on the city of Barcelona, or very close. We are located 25 kilometers outside the city. And there are other 3, Rovira i Virgili, Girona and Lleida, which are located on the other 3 main cities of Catalonia. The private universities, there are also 3 on the Barcelona area, and the 4th one, Universitat de Vic, is located on the central of the country. As I say, the number of students is around 240,000 students. The teaching and research staff, it's a little more than 18,000. Support staff, little less than 10,000. And each year we graduate on the public universities almost 34,000 graduates and 1,700 doctorate students on public universities. That's for the introduction, and then who we are. We are the Green Kakadu, as Xavier explained, and as this morning Andy said, we think that it's better, we are better and we are strong when we work together. You may think that if we are on the same area, we must be competitors, and we are competitors in some aspects of the university, but we also can cooperate, and that's what we are looking for. We, as Xavier explained, we organize and we have meetings all together, more or less 3-4 times a year. We have an agenda on this meeting, so it's not just to meet and to talk of anything. We have different points, and apart from these formal meetings, we are very connected among us. We share information that we may need. When some of us have any problem or something that they know that in another university we already passed it, we ask the others, and we do not compete, we cooperate. And we have been done so for more than 10 years, and every time the link between us is stronger because the benefits are also stronger. We identify common interests and we work on projects. Apart from specific and concrete topics, for instance, the Erasmus Plus, the new Erasmus Plus, when it was launched, there were many questions, and we have similar questions, and as a group, we ask this question to the different administrations. We organize seminars also between us, and we work on projects. We like to identify one project and work on it as it's let's say a medium-term project. And one of these projects is the indicators project. As Xavier said also, we work as a lobby, and we act with the regional and with the national government. And they recognize us, and they hear us, and we also think that other universities in Spain, in other regions of Spain, they are looking at us and they identify us also as a good practice, and they are trying to do the same. But it's not easy if not everyone believes on the project and cooperates with the others. Going to the topic that we will talk today, and the links with the HEIDA project is the indicators project. We decided to work on a list of internationalization indicators linked to internationalization interests. That was a project that was I will say 5 or 6 years ago, so it's not a new project. And it's a bottom-up project. We work, as I explained, from the universities, and but with the idea since the beginning that this would be a project that when we have the conclusions, we should include the local administration, and if we want it to be succeeded, we must have it approved by at least the Catalan governing, yes, the government of Catalonia. We wanted to analyze all dimensions of internationalization of higher education. Not only what we are working on, we are working most on mobilities, on the double degrees, but also the research, the cooperation that in many universities are linked with the internationalization. We had meetings, these meetings that we usually have. In every one of the meetings, one of the points of the agenda was the indicators project. We work on it for years. It's not a short project. We work for more than 2 years until at last we have the list. And we wanted it, as I explained, to have the recognition of the Catalan government and to have it integrated on the data system of the Catalan university system. Why we work on this project? For us, it's very important to ensure the common understanding and comparability of the different indicators. As it is said also this morning, there are many different definitions, many different time scales, and Andy gives us the example of courses, but also international students. What do you understand for international students? In any university, there can be many different definitions. And if you are working with data and you are collecting data, and then you believe on this data and you are doing this work because you want that this data will be used for taking decisions, you want that these data are well collected, and when they compare them, they are comparing apples with apples, not apples with oranges. And also the quality of the information. For us, it's very important, the quality of the information. And this data, the Catalan university system, they were beginning to use the data for evaluation, for promoting the university system abroad, but also for funding. As I have explained, some of the Catalan universities, or many of them, are public universities, and we are financed by the Catalan government. And one part of this finance is on agreements, some quality agreements, let's say. And in this agreement, there are many indicators, and some of these indicators were international indicators. They were working on these agreements, and we thought that we want to be proactive. We didn't want to wait until they gave us the indicators and just ask us to give the data, because of what we have been talking during all the day, because we want that the data are correct and all the universities give the same data, because there is an amount of money, and this money, if it's not for me, it's for the other one. We cooperate, we do not compete, but we want that the cooperation is fair and that everything is done correctly. And how we did it? We first identify and select the indicators. Then we made an analysis of what each institution understands for each one of the indicator, and that's very hard work, and we wanted to reach on a consensus for all the definitions. Then we made a study of the viability of getting those data. That are important, but if you identify a very important indicator, but then it's very difficult to get the data, or not all the universities could get those data, then it's not possible to use, or it will be more difficult to get it integrated on the system. And then the approval. For us, it's also very important that it's not only our work, but that the government and the authorities of the Catalan university systems approve and uses these indicators on their demands. And then the implementation. Implementation, it's not easy. The identification. As I explained, we worked for more than 2 years identifying and selecting the different indicators. We classified them on 6 groups: institutional, student, staff, teaching, research, and cooperation for development. We used one file. We prepared one file with the name of the indicator. This is one example. The objective, which is the objective, the definition, and as I explained to you, we work very much on the definition, and then how data will be presented. And on which period, if it will be semestral or annual, if it will be for one course, or it will be for an academic year or for a natural year, and observations, if there are different observations. The analysis we made for the definition especially, we made for each one of the indicators these cheeses, we call it cheese. And we work at each institution. How are we working with this specific indicator? For instance, in this case, what in the Universidad Autonoma of Barcelona, what we do understand for international students, and in each one of the university, what are you currently understand as international student. And then we make this common, I don't know if you can read, well, it's very little, the letters, but each one of these definition, if it's common on all of the universities, and then we included it on the definition, or if it's not, just in some of the universities, and then we talk and we argue among us and decide whether we include or not on the definition. For instance, this definition of international students, we defined it as the students who attended one of the universities of the Catalan university system with the intention of studying a degree. And who have completed their studies in a foreign education system immediately prior to entering the university, to enter the Catalan university. Only the international students who enroll in full degree programs are counted. And we explicitly exclude the students in mobility, because we have another indicator for mobility students. We include the students who are taking an undergraduate or master program in order to obtain a joint, double, or multiple degree, because, well, in some cases, well, this is one example that it seems to be easy to define international students, but some university included the students for a joint, double, or master multiple degree, and others don't. And that's why it's important to also specify what it's included and when it's not, what it's excluded. What happens here? Do we have to plug? Yeah. No, pero decía que teníamos que enchufarlo.
Ah, sí, ya traen.
Ah, ok. Yeah. Then the viability. Well, as we were working on these indicators, obviously we were talking with the responsibles of the Inter-University Council of Catalonia, which is part of the governing, well, the Department of Universities of the Catalan government, and also with the Catalan Association of Public Universities. On this time, the INPI project was working on, and we were part of this project as Catalan Association of Public Universities. So we get some of the definitions and some of the indicators that the INPI project was working on. As Melissa says, this morning there are more than 400 indicators, and well, we were working on little. We didn't work on so many. We worked on around 60 indicators, and these around 60 indicators, we wanted them, as I explained, to be easy, or at least not to be very difficult to get the data. To get the data and to how we give the universities this data to the government. The UNEIX is a data system of the Catalan government, where all the Catalan universities every year has to dump data from their own informatic systems. And as many as possible, we want that the indicators that we are working in could be within this transfer of information from the universities to the Catalan government. There were different working groups, one on each one of the 6 areas, and they worked on, sorry.
I've lost battery. If anyone has a laptop,
Well, no, don't worry. Yeah, I can speak. Yeah. They are working on, as I say, on the 6 working groups, and they made a map of the different indicators with the description, with the considerations, if the information is or not available within this data system of the Catalan government, and different notes, if there are any notes. There are some indicators, such as the number and list of networks and or international association to which the universities belong, which are not included on this data system. And then are the universities who have to provide this data to the to this to the government, the inter-university Catalan government. There are others that they are okay, thank you. That they are transferring the information as we have defined the indicator. So in these cases, we do not have to work, and it's okay. And there are other cases in which, here, for instance, this is one of the examples that I was saying, the number and list of networks. It's not included on the data that we usually give to this UNH data system. So the universities has to provide, and we had to define in which scheme the universities provide this information. There are others, like the student in mobility programs, that when we made this study, just partially the information was on this general data system. So both universities and this united data system had to adapt in order to get the information as the indicator is defined. And then the approval. Once all this work is done, for us it was very important that the Catalan government approved the list of indicators. Among these more than 60 indicators, the International Relations Commission of the Catalan University Council, which is formed by the vice-rectors of all Catalan public and private universities, and the General Director for Universities of the Catalan government, they selected 30 indicators. And these indicators they presented to the board, and on the board is the rectors of the universities who approved the list of the indicators. For us, this is very important because also, as this morning was said, Melissa said, who is the owner of the data and how is it processed? Is the office that, in our case, the international office, or the research office, or the alumni office, the owner of the data? Is the office who processes all the data and dumps it to the general system, the owner? And that's very important because if we approve a list of indicators, but it's not approved by the rector and by all the rectors of the all Catalan universities, it will be much more difficult for us internally to convince the other offices to change the way they are using for collecting and for processing those indicators. And in some cases, there are universities which have to change very much the way they are collecting some indicators. And that's why we wanted that it's a bottom-up process, but then it's approved by the higher the rector, authority, yes, sorry. The higher authority of the university, who are the rectors. And then the implementation. You may think that, well, that's all done, it's approved, and you just have to implement it. But it's not easy. It's a very long process, and there are many actors, as I'm explaining, and we are still working on it. We can say that all the 12 universities have the 30 indicators collecting and given as we have defined it. We have to keep working on these definitions, and adapting on how not the definitions, but yes, on how the data could be collected and could be put together in order to can be used by the different purposes. And as a final comments, I can say that most of the indicators are either input or output. There are very few outcome indicators on the ones that we have approved, and no impact indicators as the HEIDA project, but then we can link it with HEIDA, so HEIDA can help us and help us to move one pass forward. Is there a perfect number? Often we focus more on quantity and not quality. Are the quantity indicators the one that we really need, or are the first one, and then we also have to move to quality indicators? It's a slow process at the beginning, and if you're looking for visibility in a short or medium term, you will be upset because it's a long-term process. And it's, I will say that it will never end. It's constantly adapting, and you have to be constantly updating the indicators because of the changes at the higher education institutions, the international priorities, and for us, we know that when we finally get these 30 indicators, will be not the same as the one we defined. We know that we have to keep on working on the indicators. And in this sense, we are sure that the HEIDA tool will be very, very useful for us. And I encourage you also to use it. And thank you.
Are there questions for Marta about the experience in the Catalonian universities of this collaboration example, not within the institution, but between different institutions? I want to make a small note that the Green Kakadu group was part of the inspiration for us here in Turkey to also start the ITRU group, Internationalization of Turkish Research Universities. It's a group of 5 universities now, and in a year and a half, we have managed to start collaborating on different issues in terms of visibility through our common partners at major international conferences. So the impact of your group goes beyond, the Catalonian region in terms of inspiring us, for example, in Turkey to start collaborating more as Turkish universities as well. So thank you for starting that and giving ideas to others. Okay, so we have now reached, let's say, the final part of the conference. I want to say thank you for enduring until now. I know the topic might seem dry. It's data, as Andy was saying in the morning. Always people always think about data as a burden, something very dry, not sexy, but actually once you get into it and realize the potential of how to use it to make decisions, to convince others, to change things for the better at your institutions, they become a little bit more engaging and attractive. So for the closing session, I just wanted to ask the people who have chaired the sessions in the afternoon to give just 1 minute or 2 minutes of comments of what were the main topics and questions raised during your sessions. And then we will have a final short period of time for, again, questions or comments from you. Okay? So I will ask Nada? Yeah? You can come to join. Oh. I knew that was going to happen with that.
Okay, I survived.
Yeah, but you survived. Okay. Things should work.
You know, it's everything about data. I was not informed about the status of this one. Okay, I was chairing the session titled "Using Data to Monitor the Quality of International Partnership Objectively." The presentation was done by Paul Leys from the Ghent University in Belgium, and he presented a tool. Okay, everything we were talking about some tools, how gathering the data and then how use the data. Aquatic, and it is a tool that is assessing the quality of the partnership from different perspective, from different indicators. And the discussion, it was financed by the Flanders National, where is Paul, if you can, Flemish National Council, okay? And they were quite successful because I understood that somehow all the Flemish university already participate in this project. So they will put the data or making the analysis of their data through this system. But one of the issues that raised in the presentation is how this data will be used at the end. And the answer was that for now, the data are owned by each institution. So no access from the other institution publicly or just granted. It is possible if some institution ask another one to give some information, okay, because the data are available, and probably they will have to give some data information to the national Flanders system, because they also co-finance the data, the system. They have still some other challenges, how to improve the system in the future, and always having in the mind how to improve the quality of delivering the teaching and the management of the higher education and the whole system. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have chaired two sessions, actually, the second and the fourth one. And I would like to thank the presenters for their interesting presentation. The first one was Marie-Jo Godert, a certificate for assessing the quality of internationalization. It was actually a very interesting and complementary project, and I structured some idea trying to understand what we have learned from their presentation and what can we transfer to our project, and maybe they also could transfer in their own works. So first of all, in the case of the certificate for assessing the quality, Marie-Jo presents some criteria to use in this process of assessing, and how the university can use this tool in order to self-assess their own programs and institutions. We saw that there are a lot of similarities with our project in terms of indicators. In their case, they are working with criteria. In our case, in HEIDA project, we work with indicators. We also understand that it's needed a flexible approach. In our case, we selected from a list of indicators. In their cases, they are opening the indicators to each one of the universities, so the university is able to use their own indicators, those indicators which the institution consider that are more relevant for their context. And also in our project we debated a lot about this balance between what is international and what is local. So I think in this sense I understand that it's needed high level of flexibility in order to apply the indicators. Also, Mari-Jo present us good practices, and also we understand that sometimes it's very useful to give universities examples on how the things could be improved. And also we find other similarity, for example, the difficulty to understand and to define some terms. We also debated about this as in our case, in HEIDA project, we spend a lot of time debating on how to define different indicators, how or what we are understanding about different terms. So in this case, the example was internationalization, intercultural, and which is the best or the most adequate term. So in this case also we understood that it's very important to clearly define the terms when we apply a model or an assessment tool and so on. So this was the second session. If you agree, I can present the fourth one. In this case, we have the Lawrence Weheimer presentation about big data in decision making in higher education. It was also a very interesting and a very practical session. We really enjoy, I think, the tool. In this case, also we learn a lot of things from HEIDA point of view. We know another tool and the importance of the visuals in explaining the results, and I was thinking a lot in how our reports are looking at the end, the importance of provide academics or managers with visuals. Sometimes it's more effective. Also, we understood that it's very important to have easy access to the data, big data in this case, and to have updated data. It's also very important. And in order to keep the managers or the academic leaders in this case updated, we agreed, for example, that the main issue or the main key is the interpretation of this data. How do you interpret and how are you able to use this data in order to make sense of the information provided? And maybe I think this is the key also in the HEIDA project, to provide academic leaders with the tools and the training. In this case, we also had this training module in order to know how to interpret and how to get benefit of the information university have. Thank you.
Come back very briefly. Just to give a quick summary of the session that I chaired, which was presented by Valery Dermol from our partner institution in Slovenia. His session was a very specific case study of how they approach at their institution the issue of performance and managing performance at their university, and using a data warehousing environment or architecture. Valery had a slide that for me was quite useful, because he was saying, especially when you're a new institution or a small one, it's very important that you set up very well at first the policies, the procedures, the structure, the organizational structure of the institution, and the technologies. And if you do that right, it's going to be easier to then, the harder part of culture, of managing people, or of developing skills in your staff and in your managers, to creating a better culture of collaboration. So one important point for me was that sometimes we try to tackle the harder parts of culture and or change of culture in organizations, but sometimes it is also needed to look at, do we actually have procedures? Do we have the right organization or structure for internationalization and for managing performance? His case study looked at different, let's say, management tools such as the balanced scorecard models, the PDCA quality loop, which was, requirements as they were going through an accreditation process. And we also found this in other institutions, that accreditations are sometimes the push that makes organizations start to look in more detail at the data and their practices. One interesting measure that they have as an institution is their progression rates. We also learned that in Slovenia, students can pretty much stay as a student for many, many years because there is an incentive from the government to do that. So an indicator that is important for them is progression. So there are some programs in which the progression rates from first year to second year or second year to third year are very low. But so in itself, that number could look very negatively. But once you understand the context of the country in which there is a bigger system at hand in which students are not really encouraged to finish the program on time, then it makes more sense. Valerie was, I think, also very honest in sharing that they were using Excel spreadsheets and SharePoint because it was the tools that they had, and it is not easy to always implement it across the organization, but it's a start as a young organization. So I'm going to stop now. I'm going to ask Javier. Well, I don't think. Should we? Well, you're all here. You have just heard what Marta was saying. So let's keep that. All right. So do we have any final comments, questions, reflections on today that we want to share? Yep. Okay. We're going to be emailing you a bit later also for some feedback after the conference, and we try to make it as quick to complete as possible. Again, I would like to thank you very, very much for being here. I know we're all very busy people with many responsibilities, especially those of you who were coming from outside Istanbul, from abroad or within Turkey, for taking the time to join us. And I hope that you will have taken some practical ideas, examples, contacts. I think the idea is that we become a community, that we can feel comfortable talking to each other through our LinkedIn group or the personal contacts you have made here to learn from each other, to see how did you do this and what challenges did you face in this data management process. Sign up for the campus tours tomorrow if you haven't done that, final reminder. And thank you very much all for coming. So we are now closed.